Welcome to the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast. I'm Greg Drevinstead, editor-in-chief at Rider Magazine. We want to thank Western Power Sports for supporting this episode. And our guest on episode 85 is Dominick Lemerise-Gauvin. He's the manager of global product strategy for Can-Am On-Road, which includes both its two-wheel and three-wheel platforms. Dominick, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Great. Well, I'm in California. You are in Quebec, in Valcourt. That's BRP's corporate headquarters, where the factory is based.
Yeah,
And so, for those that don't know, Can-Am is a brand owned by BRP, which is Bombardier Recreational Products, a Quebec-based company that owns quite a few power sports brands, the Ski-Doo snowmobile brand, the Sea-Doo personal watercraft brand, the Rotax engine company, and of course Can-Am, which is both off-road and on-road vehicles.
hmm
Can you give us a little background on the Can-Am brand, which I know has been around for quite a long time?
yeah. So the Can-Am brand started out in the 70s on two wheels on motorcycle. Back in the day, it was just a small group. The company was much smaller back then, and they worked on a couple motocross, enduro type, and some dual type motorcycles, which were in the market for a couple of years. Since then, the brand went through a hiatus when we exited the motorcycle back then and came back through the ATVs and then with the coming in of side by side as well in more recent years, and then has really exploded through the side by side and ATV segments that we've offered now today with new products almost coming out yearly. And at one point, I think every 6 months there was new side by sides coming
Uh,
out. So there was a big, we'll say, explosion into the off-road market with the Can-Am brand through that. And around early or mid 2000s, around the 2007, 8, we introduced the three wheels on under the Can-Am brand. And the three-wheel vehicles was really a new product coming out. There was a lot of trikes in the market today from the motorcycle industry that was putting trike kits to get a more stability on road for a lot of consumers. But from factory, there wasn't a lot of OEMs that offered from factory. And what BRP looked at through the Can-Am brand was really how can we'll still call it democratize the open road, make the open air experience available to more people, and can we rethink the architecture of what was we'll call it a traditional trike to heighten the vehicle dynamics that you could get on three wheels. And that's where the Y architecture came from on our three-wheel vehicles. And today that provides a lot of consumers, millions of consumers around the world with a peaceful, fun to ride, open air experience for a lot of people.
Great. Well, yeah, that's really what I wanted to focus on is your on-road vehicles and particularly your three-wheel vehicles. Yeah, I actually tested the first Spider RS when it came out in 2008, and I've tested many others. Myself and others at our magazine have tested the RT touring models, the F3 Cruiser models, the smaller Riker models, and then the recently released Canyon models. So I kind of want to go back to because you were talking about how BRP was realized that there were trikes in the market. Most of them were not factory built, and of course, a traditional trike that we're thinking of is a vehicle that starts out as a motorcycle, and typically the rear wheel is removed and they put an axle on with two wheels. So
Mm-hmm.
the two wheels are in back. And having ridden and tested a number of these traditional trikes, and again, most of them are conversions, companies that take an existing vehicle such as Harley Ultra Classic or a Goldwing, Honda Goldwing or something like that, and then replace the single rear wheel with two wheels. With a traditional trike, you keep the same rounded profile motorcycle wheel and tire in front. You still have a handlebar and so forth, but then you've got two almost large car tires in the back, or wheels with car tires, large contact patches. So the dynamic is a little bit it's obviously quite different, doesn't lean, and then
Mm-hmm.
but with the steering, because you've still got a small contact patch with a rounded profile front tire, the handling is I'd say a little bit awkward at best. But going into a corner, Sort of like the old ATCs that Honda used to make, is that going into a corner when the two wheels are in back and a single one in front, it's not nearly as stable with the Can-Am, with the Spider flips that around where the two wheels are in front. And so you've got the two large contact patches that give you a much more planted feel as you go into a
Mhm.
corner. And so, yeah, that's an interesting approach to, basically it's designed to be that from the factory, as opposed to something that's been converted to three wheels. The Spiders and other three-wheel vehicles are designed to have two wheels in front. They're built and designed that way.
Exactly. And I think that's the crux of it is thought with that intention in mind from the get-go. When the first drawings were done, was what can we do in terms of vehicle dynamics that can make this three-wheel configuration, open air configuration, as fun as possible with restricting the compromise that you get on the vehicle dynamics that you would have. Because if we go to the other extreme, like a car, which has four wheels planted, you get great vehicle dynamics with a car. But like you said, with the rounded tire, when you convert an existing motorcycle, what happens is the bike was really meant to lean. And when you're restricting its ability to lean, it can create something a little bit awkward, but still visually a great statement for a lot of consumers that exist in the market. On our side, what we thought is, can we bridge that gap a little bit between the dynamics of the vehicle and the experience and the visual aspect of the vehicle at the same time?
Right. Well, it's also interesting because, as you're saying, yes, if you again, there's many of them on the road, and even nowadays, Harley, a few number of years ago, Harley Davidson began building from the factory some of its trikes.
Mhm.
It's got a tri-glide, it's got the freewheeler, which is a softail platform. Again, but they still have a rounded front wheel, and the entire chassis and suspension, everything was designed to be a two-wheel single track vehicle that leans into corners. Whereas with the Spiders, Rikers, and Canyon, maybe you can talk a little bit about like how the front suspension works. That each wheel is independent. It's driven.
Mhm.
The only driven wheel is the single rear wheel in the back. It's a belt-driven final drive, but the entire suspension and braking system on the three-wheel vehicle is designed for these to be in this configuration.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. Entirely rear wheel driven today. We have the belt, and on the Riker we have a shaft drive, which was to make it uh, super easy and super low maintenance for a lot of entry level consumers that are coming in for the first time and have in mind more of the car mentality of very low maintenance intervals. And so the Riker is what we really pushed on that one. And one of the things we developed with one of our partners, Bosch, was the VSS, the Vehicle Stability System. And it looks at A-arms in the front. So the suspension, like you said, independent suspension on all three wheels. And then it looks at the movement that's happening on the vehicle itself as you're driving, as well as your driving speed, as well as the angle of the steering, and there's yaw sensors on the vehicle. All this goes back into, we'll call it the brain of the vehicle, and tries to assess at all times that you are staying flat on the vehicle, and you can bring the most out of your driving experience without going overboard and going into risky territory. So this is where the vehicle stability system really comes into play in order to keep you planted and keep the consumer that we're trying to reach confident on the road. Like we said earlier in the conversation, the idea of these was really to democratize the open road. And now with the Canyon, we're trying to democratize all types of roads. But the idea is to make it attainable for more people. So it's not to replace what people already have in the garage. It's, hey, if you want an open air experience and you were intimidated or it just wasn't for you to have a motorcycle, this is another option, another alternative that you can have. And I've talked to consumers have both a motorcycle and a three wheel, and they use it in different times for different reasons. And again, it's a complementary thing. And in order to feel confident in driving that vehicle, the VSS is a big part of that for a lot of our consumers. It helps them get over some maybe anxiety that they might have had.
Right. Right. Well, it's interesting because, that very first Spider RS I tested back in 2008. And, when we received that test unit at our office here in California, I was pretty new on the job. My boss tossed me the key and he said, hit the road. And I took off for a week and went out through multiple states and went to visit my dad in Utah and had a great time. And that was a very novel vehicle at the time because it had just
Hmm.
been released. There weren't really many available at dealers yet. And the looks I got from people while I was driving down the road, the sort of big eyes and kind of stunned looking, they're trying to figure out what I was riding. They would talk to me at gas stations. But I do remember that, the vehicle stability system you're talking about was a level of technology and electronic rider aids that were just not that common back then. I mean, there were ABS systems. They were much more rudimentary than what we have today. There were some traction control systems on some motorcycles, but not that many of them. But the VSS with had stability control and had traction control. It had ABS. And for people to understand that on the Spider and other three-wheel vehicles, there's a single brake pedal. So there's no hand lever for the brakes. And when
Hmm.
you press the brake pedal, it applies brakes to all three wheels. But there's electronic brake distribution. So I don't know if
Yeah.
it's that basically. I know when you're going into a corner, if you're going in and the system thinks that maybe you're going a little bit too fast for this corner, it can apply braking to the outside front wheel to help sort of
Hmm.
bring things in a bit more stable. There's even dynamic power steering that's sort of speed sensitive. So this whole system is quite sophisticated, and of course, it's evolved since it was debuted in 2008. It's much
Yeah,
more
we
sophisticated now.
definitely consistently refine the system to uh to be as invisible as possible while you ride.
Right.
That's the whole point. We don't want it to feel like an intrusive system, something that's restraining you from having the fun you want to have, but
Right.
something that's more accompanying you, and that's an invisible hand, if you will, keeping the vehicle stable at all times. And right now, yes, when you brake, it's the single brake pedal splits the braking. I think it's a 70-30 split on the general basis, but depending on your riding behavior and the dynamics that you're in at that moment, if you're in a turn or whatever, it will distribute it a bit differently. And like you said, if you're coming into a corner really aggressively and the vehicle is thinking, hey, I think this is not the right speed we should be at in this corner, it could be potentially not the outcome we want to have. So the system will read that and will gradually start maybe applying brakes, like you said, on the outside wheel. And in more extreme circumstances, could even slow your throttle to make sure that you're not keep throttling through a corner that could be uh, potentially not the outcome you want to have.
Right, right. Well, and having tested numerous spiders and Rikers and a Canyon, as well as numerous motorcycles with all different kinds of electronic rider aids, I think for some people that particularly if you're a bit maybe of a more of a traditionalist or a purist, you think, oh, I don't need that kind of stuff. But I'll just say personally, I've ridden a lot of different bikes in a lot of different situations, and I can confidently say I've had my, bacon saved by some of these things, whether it's ABS in an emergency situation, it's traction control in a very slippery, situation, is that as you're in normal riding conditions, you don't even know these things are there. They operate in the
Exactly.
background, and they're really kind of this invisible helping hand that steps in if you need it. Now, nothing's going to save you from every mistake, but it
Hmm.
certainly increases your margin of safety. And as you're describing, particularly if it increases the comfort level for more riders, because everybody has got, a range of experience, a range of ages, a range of risk tolerance. And so most people want to be able to go out and have fun and feel like they're, um, having sort of outside of their comfort zone again a bit, but they don't necessarily want to get into a dangerous situation, and nobody
Hmm.
necessarily wants that. So, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It's a all around a fun vehicle, and uh, we have consumers that come from many different walks of life. Like we deal a lot with veterans that have our vehicles and that do ride outs with our vehicles, as well as moms as well. Like it's a very wide range of consumer
right,
base that we have, very passionate people. And I'm sure if you stop any of them, they'll gladly talk your ear off for at least an hour of just their different experiences that they've had on it. But that's a lot of the fun to it is from everybody we meet that ride the product, they say a little bit what you said. Oh, you get stopped a little bit, and people are very curious about the product and its experience. But mostly is they feel like, oh, it's a community that feels very welcoming. That's a lot of fun to ride in. And like I said, like from the army veteran all the way to the mom at it's a very wide range of different personalities of different. So it's not like you can't put it on an umbrella. It's like, oh, this is the type of consumer. There is a wide array of people, and sometimes I talk to, and this is some of my favorite stories, just to see the discovery in people's eyes when they tell me, how did you first get on a Spider, or whether it's the RT or the F3 or the new Canyon? They're like, oh, I was riding, I saw one coming down the street. My wife was always on the back seat, and then she was like, you know what? I'm tired of being in the back seat. I want to get on my own thing. We try out the Spider, we bring it home, and turns out I'm riding it more than she is. And I've been sold on my two wheels for super long, but now I'm finding myself pick up the Spider key more often than I pick up my motorcycle key on a daily basis. And then so I had to buy a second one for my wife because I kept taking her bike, her three wheels all the time. So it's just funny the dynamics that you see, and uh, the overall acceptance of the entire group of riders on our side here.
Well, the interesting thing is, over the past 17 years or so since that first Spider was introduced, I understand that over 300,000 of the three-wheel vehicles have been built and sold. And what's most interesting for us, it's been announced that, the Can-Am Red Rock, the Can-Am Canyon Red Rock is our 2025 motorcycle of the year. And we had quite a few reasons for making that selection, but one of them is really it's to recognize and celebrate what the Can-Am brand has done to really grow this power sports segment. Traditional motorcyclists have always sort of, been around, and we hope we get younger riders to come in that replace the older riders that stop riding, but there seems to like to be fewer younger riders than there are older riders leaving. But you know, is with these three-wheel vehicles, as you've described, some people that may have a regular two-wheel motorcycle and a three-wheel Spider in their garage, but you also have people like we hosted a ride for the Big East Power Sports Show in Syracuse, New York, a couple weeks ago. That's where we were announcing the motorcycle of the year, and we had a mix of Spider and Riker riders and people on traditional motorcycles, and I met a couple, Jay and Wendy, and they've been married for 40 years. She'd been riding on the back of his motorcycle for decades, and somehow she also, like you were just saying, wanted to get off the back and try something, and somehow she got a chance to ride a Riker. She fell in love with it. They bought one, and he took the rear seat off of his Indian, and she hasn't ridden on the back since. So they now can have a different sort of riding experience where it was two up, and she was always behind him. He was always the one operating the vehicle, but now she gets the fun of being able to steer and enjoy the curves in a different way than just being a passenger. But really, that to as you were saying, with Can-Am wants to democratize the riding experience, and then when we get to the Canyon, the interesting thing, because this is for those that aren't familiar with it, the Canyon is the adventure platform within the three-wheel vehicle world. So as I said, you've got the Spider RT, which are the touring models that got the integrated luggage and big windscreens and a lot of comfort features. The Spider F3, which is more of a feet forward cruiser style riding position. The Riker, smaller, lighter, and then the Canyon is one that has increased ground clearance, additional suspension travel. It's not an off-road vehicle, but it can go on very rough, unpaved roads.
Mm-hmm.
And the Red Rock in particular has Fox Smart Shocks semi-active suspension, which I know is on some other vehicles in BRP's portfolio, but it really enhances the riding experience, whether you're on a paved road or off-road.
Mm-hmm.
But what we test a lot of at Ryder is their adventure bikes are very popular. They have been for 10 years, 15 years, a very strong segment of the market. But we have a lot of readers who say, hey, I'm just not tall enough for that, because the tall suspension or that you need for an adventure bike to get the ground clearance means that the seat height is often 33 inches, 34 inches, something like that. And most people, there are a lot of people that are just not comfortable on a bike that tall. The
Yep.
second is that unpaved road where the surfaces can be uneven. They can be slippery, it can be sandy, it can be gravelly or something like that, is tip overs are not uncommon. And when you have a big, heavy adventure bike, that is that can be somebody can get hurt, you can break the bike, you can just have the struggle of not being able to pick it back up if it falls over. But with a three-wheel vehicle, it won't tip over and seat height is no longer an issue. So in democratizing all roads, it really does make that style of riding available to people who have been essentially, it kind of broke down that barrier where they were like, I can't do that because there's just not a vehicle there that is that will work for me. So that's great.
Yeah, no, exactly. What we tried to do is we were looking at the industry as a whole, and we of course saw the trend that like adventures being really big, not only in North America, in Europe, all over the world. Adventure, the styling and the use of adventure, and you see it even in cars, the Jeeps of this world. There's the Bronco that came back out, like the rugged, adventuring persona of those types of vehicles is really popular and has been popular for quite a while now. And curiously enough, when we were looking at the motorcycle industry, we saw like the biggest hurdles were in this segment because of many of the reasons you just said. The ground clearance brings the seat height really high for a good portion of the population. Also, the weight of the vehicle, the slipperiness. So it's a segment that we noticed had the least amount of new entrants, like people that were not previously from motorcycling who enter this. So like someone that came from not two wheels at all, entering motorcycle for the first time, typically didn't enter through adventure motorcycles, is what we noticed. So in that we see already a barrier forming, and then we saw as well that it had the lowest take rate for women coming to that subsegment as well of the industry. So what could we do that could continue the message that we said of democratizing the open road, but now democratize all roads. And like you said, it's not the Canyon is not meant to be an off-road bike that you take through a trail a deep of mud and all that. But it's meant that you can go cross country, and if you meet a fire road, an access road, or really chaotic surface on your way across your journey, that you're not going to feel shy to go through it if need be. And this vehicle is really meant for that. And like you said, the weight doesn't become a factor when you don't have to hold up the vehicle. In our sense, with the three wheels planted at all times, you don't have to worry about holding it up. And then we thought, well, there's also a neat advantage to the amount of storage and what we can do with the storage at the back. You don't need to balance the storage to make sure that everything's all well balanced, so you're not leaning the bike on one side more than another, which is just a nice to have improvement, we'll say, to the experience of being able to pack as much as you want on the vehicle in a clever way with the link system that we attach to the back, where you can remove the passenger seat, add more storage if you wish. Really, I reserve myself not to say sky's the limit, but there is a limit to the vehicle capacity, but there's a lot of different options that we put
Right.
available and interchangeably as well. So you can configure the rear end of the vehicle according to the journey you're going to have. But that all that to say is what is more typically known as a technical terrain and something you will say graduate into when it comes to the motorcycle industry going into those types of roads. We try to, how could we get someone fresh that's only ever ridden a car before to feel comfortable in those types of environments really quickly? And that's what
Right.
the Canyon is trying to do, trying to get you in an open air experience and feel confident in a very rapid way.
Right. Well, an interesting thing, this is, and I've never had quite the same experience, but it was actually kind of the perfect light bulb moment for me, is I went to the Canyon press launch, which was held in Prescott, Arizona. Um, the I rode the Canyon Red Rock, and we did a variety of both on-road and off-road in terms of paved and unpaved roads around Prescott, Arizona. And so it just so happened that nearly 10 years before that, so that was in the spring of this year, nearly 10 years prior to that, I rode almost the same test route on a press launch for a Honda Africa Twin, which is, is a full-size adventure bike. And the roads, the unpaved roads we were on, they were not trails, they were not technical, they were what you would call fire roads or just, rural access roads that had their kind of a hard packed surface that was covered with maybe some sand. Sometimes it would be a little bit of mud, would be gravel, some embedded rock, so it made it very rough. But these were winding roads that went around some mountains and through some valleys and so forth. So on an adventure bike, I've been riding adventure bikes, since I started working at the magazine, so almost 20 years. But I'm more of a native on-road paved street bike rider. So I've learned to ride them, but I prefer the lighter bikes, the smaller dual sports, just for a comfort level. But, riding these larger adventure bikes, they've got a lot more power, they've got a lot more weight, they can be a lot of fun, but they can also be pretty tricky when you get into some tight corners and then therefore you're trying to negotiate your speed and braking as you're going through some kind of, gravel hairpin or sandy hairpin. And so I remember riding that and having fun, but also I was a bit anxious because there's always the possibility I've tipped over, I've dropped, adventure bikes. I know especially if you're riding in a group, it can be embarrassing. Maybe you break some hand guards or something, and so that's a headache. So when we did the same test route, the same unpaved roads on the canyon, there's a drift mode or rally mode that allows some drifting, so it loosens up the intervention of the traction control for the rear wheel, and I was just having a ball, and I felt I just it sunk in that I felt much more carefree. I was able to play around and do a little bit of fishtailing around some corners and so forth, and accelerate hard. But at no point in any of the tricky corners or where the surface got a lot more challenging was I didn't feel nervous about tipping it over. I had to be careful and so forth with braking and stuff like that, but I felt just much more carefree. And that's coming from somebody who is an experienced, most of the riding I do is on two-wheel vehicles and I love adventure riding, but it just felt like it was, and so I could see that for a lot of people, it will feel, they'll just be able to enjoy the experience a lot more. There's a lot
Mhm.
less worry, and it's trying to juggle the worry and the fun, on like especially if you've got a bike that is loaded for an adventure. If you're going to go camping or you're doing a backcountry discovery route, then it's a totally different situation. You're trying to come to a stop. You're trying to keep everything balanced. You're trying to get on or off the bike, and it's very tricky. And accidents happen. So yeah, that was a very different experience. And on the canyon and on the Red Rock, I also want to talk about the luggage a bit. For those that aren't familiar, the canyon has three models. There's the base canyon model, which does not include luggage. There's a higher spec Canyon XT, which includes some luggage, some additional features, make it a little bit more off-road or excuse me, adventure ready. And then the top of the line is the Canyon Red Rock, which also has the full luggage set, the Fox Smart Shock semi-active suspension, some additional adventure ready features. But for all of them, you mentioned the Link system, which is Can-Am's proprietary, or maybe it's BRP's proprietary modular kind of adventure or luggage system where you
Mhm.
can mix and match sizes of luggage. You mentioned you could remove the passenger seat, put this large link plate that has all these attachment points, and you can add. I know the accessory list is there's different sizes of luggage. There's soft bags. There's a cooler you can put on there. You can really kind of, mix and match to whatever kind of adventure you're going to go on. Maybe you're going to go camping. Maybe you're going to go fishing. Maybe
Yeah.
who knows what you're going to go do. And yeah, that's also a very cool feature that is just not, there's not anything like it in the market right now.
Yeah, what's cool about that system is so it's a quick attach quarter turn system. It allows you to install things securely without having to get your wrench out,
Right.
basically. Okay. In a very short amount of time with low effort, you can install and change around what you have. And something we have on snowmobile, something we have with all of our product lines at BRP, because if you're deep mountain sledding and you want to bring extra a jerry can for the journey, or if you're on the water, we have Fish Pros that you can put, like you said, the cooler in the back, or live wells, or whatever you wish to bring with you on your journey. But the catalog has been building over time because of off-road, side-by-side ATVs, snowmobile, as well as with PWC. And so there's a wide array of things that have been developed with the link anchors put on for the quick attach. So what we did is we tried to leverage that in order to bring as many storage options as possible to the vehicle. And yes, it comes with a top case, the Red Rock. It comes with the top case and the side cases. But if for you, you're like, oh, I want to double up the storage, you can double up the storage. You can remove the top case, double up the storage in terms of there's a box, a stacked box in front of another stacked box in the rear, or you're just removing all that, putting a 36-inch link plate, which could then you could put, I believe it's like 35 or 36-liter box in the back that does the width that goes even over the side cases and that respects the width of the side cases. So it really becomes interchangeable and depending on your journey. And that's what we noticed when we spend a lot of time with adventure riders and with overland riders on the car industry. What we noticed is people were always telling us it's got to be modular because
Right.
trip A is might not look like trip B, and trip C nor trip D. So if I'm locked in to a configuration, then I'm gonna want to take my wrench out and like put some plywood in there and try to redo something to accommodate my other trip. So we're like, how can we keep a sleek look of the vehicle, but allow you to interchange it as much as you want for the different trips, different journeys you're gonna have. And that's where the interchangeable aspect of the rear storage came in. And then, like you said, the big one on the Red Rock is the KYB semi-active suspension. That suspension is really what makes that package such a success for me in my eyes because it reads like all smart shocks do, but like it reads the environment. And if you're in a corner, it'll keep you tighter on that suspension to remove like the rolling feeling. But if you're hitting huge bumps, a lot of chaotic, like you said, like embedded rocks or holes in a road that you can find on a fire road and all that, you will barely feel it as you ride by. The wheels take it and absorb the shock, and then you keep on riding. So no need to take a double dose of Tylenol before and after the ride.
Yeah, well, I mean, semi-active suspension works great on any vehicle. I've used it on two wheels or three wheels, and yeah, some of those unpaved rocky roads in Arizona, it just sort of bounces and sort of floats right over the top. The whole idea of semi-active suspension is to keep the chassis as stable as possible, and it really adapts the damping in real time, so it can really stiffen up as you're saying. Like if you are braking really hard or going hard into a corner, it can stiffen that outside shock on the front wheel, so it keeps you from getting a lot of body roll. That static suspension, conventional static suspension just can't do. But then it can really soften up and give you a very comfortable ride when you need it to, and it can be very
Yeah,
compliant. And of course, on the Canyon with the additional suspension travel, yeah, the Smart Shock system. And yeah, I think I misspoke. I think it said Fox, but it's made by KYB. Is that correct?
yes, it's
Yeah, it's made by
KYB.
KYB. Yeah, sorry for that. But yeah, and that is really, I think that's one of the reasons what makes the Red Rock, it gives you kind of the ultimate adventure riding experience within this platform. As you move up, you get more and more features, some of which can be added to the standard Canyon or the XT, but the
Yeah,
the 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 Smart Shock system is really something that, you've got to step up to the Red Rock.
yeah.
Um,
The idea behind the packages, like the Canyon, that like the base Canyon that doesn't come with the side luggages and or the top case, was to give consumers who are techie in the sense of wanting to build it out the way they wish, okay, a blank canvas. Like, hey, if you want to not put the top case that comes standard on the other packages, and you just want the cooler and a box stacked with a jerry can, and that's your preferred setup, then go directly and build that setup for yourself and all that. So it's that one is supposed to be a blank canvas, and then the XT is like you call it the adventure ready. Like you already, if it's your first time on an adventure, you don't know how to build out your vehicle. Take this; it's got the necessities, and then you can hit the road. And then for those who are more enthusiasts, okay, and like really want to feel the difference in the riding behavior again with the smart shocks, and then that's where the Red Rock, the flagship, really steps up.
Right, right. Well, having ridden both of them, excuse me, my experience at the press launch, I rode home to California from Prescott, Arizona. So I had a nice long ride for hundreds of miles, and then for the Big East ride that we did at the Big East Power Sports Show, I picked up a Canyon Red Rock from there in Valcour, rode it down across the border, and went into Vermont and New York, and had just a fantastic ride. They're just the ride quality is great. That's an important thing. I think that's why it's similar to SUVs with the adventure bikes is that they're very popular right now because people appreciate the rugged look, they appreciate the versatility, but they're also typically pretty comfortable. Most modern SUVs don't drive like an old truck. They've got modern suspension and the additional suspension travel have got good on-road paved road quality. And I mean, I have a Toyota 4Runner that's on the pavement most of the time, but I sit up high, it's a comfortable vehicle, but I know it has the potential to go do a lot more if I want to. And I think that's why people have been attracted to the adventure bikes.
Hmm.
You have a upright seating position, so you don't have a lot of bend in your back. You don't have weight on your wrists like you may with a sportier style motorcycle or even a cruiser where you kind of sit back on your tailbone, might put some pressure on your lower back. And the Canyon platform has a similar riding experience. You've got a very
Hmm.
neutral. There's not too much bend in your knees. It's a wide, supportive seat. It's very comfortable reach to the bars, and the handling and so forth is it's great. Like I said, I spent most of the time I've ridden the Canyon has been on pavement, which is probably going to be true for most people, and that's where the ride quality was fantastic. And but also it's ready for to turn off the pavement and go have a little bit more fun or an adventure. So yeah, it's great. Like I said, not sure if you're aware, but Ryder's been it's traditionally a two-wheel motorcycle magazine. We've tested three-wheel vehicles. Our second issue in fall of 1974, we had a sidecar buyer's guide. We've tested scooters, we've tested trikes. We've tested Spiders and Rikers and now the Canyon. Our first motorcycle of the year we selected was in 1990. So this is our 35th year. This is the first time we've selected a three-wheel vehicle. We've gotten a lot of pushback. We've gotten a lot of resistance from traditional motorcyclists that are purists that say, hey, that thing's not a motorcycle. Now, technically speaking, at least in the United States, the federal government and most states define a motorcycle as any vehicle with a saddle that's up to three wheels. And I don't necessarily want to try and convince people to, ride something that they don't want to ride. But what is kind of disappointing is that people have this kind of exclusionary approach, like, well, that's not the traditional motorcycle that I ride, so it shouldn't be considered. In my opinion, if you don't want to ride one of these, that's fine. But the people that do really shouldn't be excluded from the community of riders, whether you call them motorcyclists or trike riders or spider riders. And I know the spider community and Riker community is huge and very tight knit and very passionate. And so that's a big part of why we selected the Canyon Red Rock. I mean, yes, its capability, its technology, its design, those are all very important. But really to celebrate BRP and the Can-Am brand for what it has done over the last 17 or 18 years is really trying to grow the segment, trying to provide more options for more people. And like I said, breaking down the barriers to adventure riding is huge. We hear that over and over again. Like, that's great. You guys test all these bikes. I can't ride one. I'm just, for whatever reason, I'm not tall enough. I don't have the skill set or something. And that has been eliminated. And to us at the magazine, that's worth celebrating. And again, I think this is, we applaud BRP's efforts to really kind of take its own path. I mean, now, of course, in addition to three-wheel vehicles, just last year you released two-wheel motorcycles, but they have an electric drivetrain, Can you speak a little bit about why Can-Am and BRP decided to go with an electric drivetrain for the Pulse, which is the Roadster model, and the Origin, which is the dual sport?
Yeah, of course. Well, first, I want to say really a big thank you for the motorcycle of the year. When I heard that you guys were naming the Canyon motorcycle of the year, I was really, really happy because it does highlight a vehicle that's near and dear to all of our hearts, but that we believe really is trying to do a good job at trying to democratize more and more the open air experience to more people. And yes, it's not for everybody, and I'm not here to convince anybody that doesn't want to get on to ride. But I can say that the thousands of people that I've spoken to in my career at BRP that ride our products really, really enjoy them, and I'm happy always to ride with them. And And honestly, I gotta say there's more acceptance than we would believe just sitting behind the computer in the community. You talk to people, most people are super happy, and the more the merrier in the open air experience. So a big thank you for it. I was not expecting this, and when I saw it, I was quite happy and touched to see the acknowledgement on this product.
Right.
Now,
Well,
on your
go ahead. Yeah.
go ahead.
No, yeah, go
On
ahead.
your
Talk about the electric bikes. Yeah.
yes, on your second statement. So yes, we just re-entered motorcycle, traditional motorcycle, two-wheel motorcycle for the first time since the 70s. So it's been a minute since we've had two wheels on the road under the Can-Am brand, and we did so in a non-traditional way yet again. At BRP, we like to push the envelope of innovation and non-traditional, and so we entered through electric. Uh, Electric uh, has its ups and downs in terms of popularity in the market. We saw from the car industry that it did take a while for the numbers really to come in terms of sales. And and so we know it's a long journey for electric in all aspects. Uh, but we're big fans of trying to understand the proper use that a consumer has with a product. And with the pulse and the origin, our intention and what we were aiming for and the consumers we were developing this in hand with, because we did a lot of clinics, riding with consumers, workshops, trying to understand how they ride their vehicle, how they use their current motorcycles on a day-to-day basis. And what we realize is most people, if you're talking about a commuting sense, don't do a lot of mileage on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
Now there is a subset of the consumer uh, playground that do 200, 300, 400 plus kilometers or miles in a weekend, and that's what they like to do. But what we realized, especially mid 30s all the way to early 50s, a lot of people have children at home, and then they get their riding time more at night after dinner
Right.
or to go to and from work. And most of that is under 100 kilometers total. They'll go to work 30 kilometers, come back another 30 at most. And then that's about the ride, but they'll do it every day. That's the environment in which they play in. And in that sense, electric made a lot of sense because just like your cell phone, you get up every morning full charge.
Right. Right.
And then you go to work. And if you used it more because you know what, I'm going to take the long way to work today because you know what, I got some time and I want to have some fun and used it up a little bit more than you typically do. And you're like, when I finish work, I'm gonna also take the long way. So you know what, I'll charge it while I'm working. I mean, you're not actively stopping at a gas station to take up the 10 minutes, the 5 minutes it takes to refuel. It's charging while you're doing something else. Like the same thing with your phone. If you're at work, you used up your phone a lot in the morning, you watch videos or what have you, you drained a bit more of the battery than you typically do. Charge it while you work. It's working by itself while you're doing something else. So it's not taking away any of your time during the day. And then when you come back home, again, if you've charged it at work, you're probably fully charged again. And if you didn't, you have enough to go back home and then rinse and repeat every day. Like every day you wake up with a full charge vehicle, like every day you wake up with a full charge phone. And I've done it all last summer. I was riding an Origin to and from work. I had 45 kilometers to go to work, 45 kilometers to come back. Did it every day, saved a ton on gas.
Yeah.
It probably was costing me $3 in electricity, and now we're lucky in Quebec. Electricity is less expensive in terms of a commodity, but $3 of electricity a week versus $50 for a tank of gas
Right.
that it would have cost me otherwise. So that was that's the side benefit. But every day I'd come back home with a smile on my face because the feeling of the acceleration you get from electric is really fun. Like it's instant torque right from zero. So in that use case in that environment for that type of consumer, electric made a lot of sense to us. And
Right.
we're like, no detours by the gas station, no need to worry about maintenance. And that's why we put a silent chain system in the back, which is something we use on snowmobile, but it's enclosed. So if you're going off road, let's say with an Origin, no dirt, no rocks, nothing can snag. Well, for example, a belt,
Right.
and then it's low maintenance, just like a belt would be, or even more so. So no need to look at the tension or anything like that, because there's an automatic tensioner in the chain case, regulating the chain to make sure that it's always at optimal tension. And there's a set amount of oil that keeps that chain lubricated. So unlike a chain drive where you need to lubricate every so often, no need to do that. So for someone that's just in and out of the city, that lives in the city, that doesn't have garage space to do all the maintenance as usual, they would typically need to do it more maybe on the street or something like that, or in a parking garage in an apartment building or condo complex. This just made a lot of sense for those types of consumers. Like I said, every tool has its job, and for us, this specific job had a really nice fit with the electric tool of the Can Pulse and Origin.
Right. Well, yeah, I know that, the electric vehicle market has obviously grown a lot and just motorcycles from a packaging standpoint have limitations. We can only carry so much battery capacity on a motorcycle, whereas, in a car, the entire, skateboard chassis can be nothing but batteries and they can have a lot more range. Um, and of course, the, recharge time, there's just a number of things that, based on current technology, there are some limitations that are kind of built into it. Similar to like us talking about with the three-wheel vehicles. It's like it's not for everybody, but for those that are open-minded to it, I've ridden electric motorcycles. I find the riding experience pretty cool because, as you said, it's just twist and go, kind of like a scooter. So you're not having to deal with gears, which simplifies the riding experience. And then, whereas as much as I enjoy the rumble and vibration of an engine in a motorcycle, that can be part of the riding experience. The silent riding experience is just pretty cool. You hear the wind more, and especially with the enclosed chain case, you don't even hear the chain. Normally, you might hear some chain slap. That would be about all you would hear on some electric motorcycles. But yeah, it's just a very different riding experience. And I agree that the daily commuter is probably the best test case because you can, the range becomes less of an issue, the charge time becomes less of an issue. Yeah, for the Origin, which is a dual sport, well, if your intention is to ride from your home to a place where you can get off of the pavement on some trails, yeah, it might put you on a bit of a shorter leash than it would be because I live in California and I've got to ride 50 miles to get to some trails. So, it would be a challenge for me to be able to do the whole trip on one charge. But again, it's the electric vehicle market. There's more vehicles being added every day, and there's tons of electric bikes, like bicycles. That, I mean, they're just everywhere where I live in Southern California. And as more people they expect it, they want it to be quiet, or they want the certain kind of riding experience, and the technology is just going to continue to improve. So I can understand that for BRP, it's yeah, it's a long play, to as it becomes more and more accepted in the market and more user friendly, and the prices are, reasonable. So yeah, but
Yeah, and
I,
the reality is Can-Am is back after many years of being away from traditional motorcycles, from two-wheel motorcycles. And so for us, it's going to take some time to build up that brand and the awareness over again. Uh, and we're not as, we'll say, recent in a lot of motorcyclists' mind as the tens of brands that are out there already today. And so coming in early on this technology front was a way for us to slowly build our brand at the same time as the electric technology is building up as well in this industry.
right,
So it was a deliberate move to be early in order to kind of rising tide raises all ships type of
right.
deal to rise with the interest of EV on over time and the continuous improvement that EV technology is going to undergo.
Right. Well, Dominic, you've been very generous with your time. I really appreciate the ability to have a conversation with you about all of the Can-Am vehicles, on-road vehicles, three-wheel, two-wheel. Again, want to celebrate BRP and the Can-Am brand specifically for you have very unconventional thinking, and that's what we need in our industry. I mean, there's always going to be the traditional vehicles that, brands that take a more traditional line, but innovating and thinking kind of outside the box is great. And so it's providing more options for more people, and I think that's absolutely what our industry needs. And again, that's a big part of what we was part of the recognition for the Canyon Red Rock for Motorcycle of the Year is you've developed a great platform that has really evolved over the last 17, 18 years. And, you've really filled out a lot of different parts of the segment, offering, different riding experiences for the touring rider, for the cruising rider, for the adventure rider, for, more of the smaller entry level accessible, platform with the Riker, which, by the way, I tested a Riker rally, and that has a rally mode in it that allows you to just, if you're on a sandy, gravelly road or something, you can absolutely just have a ball on that thing. I mean, I was doing
Yeah.
donuts and all kinds of stuff. So there's a playfulness to these vehicles, or can be, if you want that kind of a riding experience, or you can also have just, a very safe, comfortable, touring experience for, husband and wife to go the miles. I mean, it's a the the as I said at the outset, we want as many people riding as possible because our industry is one that, again, do we have enough newer people that are joining our industry, that are coming
Mhm.
in as the new riders? Maybe they didn't grow up riding dirt bikes as kids. Maybe they're the ones riding electric bicycles now, and they'll be like, hey, well, one of these Can-Am Origins or Pulses makes sense to me. I don't really want to deal with the noise and hassle and changing oil and filling up gas or something like that. Or whatever it is, and transmissions that don't require a lot of effort to change, like the CVTs on the Rikers or the SE6 on the Spiders and Canyons, you know, whatever you can do to reduce the barriers or objections people would have to trying something out and trying to go have fun and maybe get off their device, get away from their computer, and go out and enjoy the world around us. I mean, that's a big part of what we celebrate at Ryder is getting out in the world and touring and traveling and experiencing things. And so we don't care how many wheels you've got. We don't care what brand you ride. And so anyway, it's been a great conversation. Again, I really appreciate your time, Dominic. It's great talking with you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Greg. Appreciate the time.
Wonderful. Well, Can-Am, you can find their on-road vehicle. They're all over the Facebook, Instagram, and so forth. We've got our Motorcycle of the Year announcement is in our November issue of Rider Magazine. It's on our website, it's on our social media. There's lively commentary going on right now, so chime in if you'd like to. And for the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast, I'm Greg Drevenson. Thanks for listening, and keep the rubber side down. If you've enjoyed listening to the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast, please subscribe, leave us a positive rating, and tell your friends. We also encourage you to visit ridermagazine.com, where you can get the latest in motorcycle news and reviews and sign up for our free weekly newsletter. You can also subscribe to print and digital editions of Rider Magazine, which is published 12 times a year. Thanks again for listening.